If you didn't understand before, I hope you understand now. Because you're now listening to the We Talking podcast brought to you by Island Girl Team. This podcast, we are literally talking about every and anything with your girl, Kamilah Gumbs. So subscribe from wherever you get your podcast and get ready to talk. Welcome to episode 8 of the We Talking podcast. And today we have a very special guest, which is Dr. Nilda Arduin. And today we're going to discuss the importance of understanding the Constitution of Sint Maarten and her experiences on being the first ever ombudsman. So before we get into the conversation, here is a little about Dr. Arduin. So Dr. Arduin was born in Curacao and lives on Sint Maarten since 1982. She studied law as her third profession and started a career in law in 1988. In 1993, she obtained her PhD in law at the Vlaia University in the Netherlands, defending her thesis on international real estate timesharing. As a lawyer and consultant, she advised governments and the private sector nationally and internationally in various areas of law. After constitutional reform within the Dutch Kingdom in October 2010, Dr. Arduin became the first Ombudsman of Sint Maarten, charged to protect the rights of the people and be the guardian of the Constitution, a unique competence within the Dutch territories. She had the authority to present newly ratified laws and regulations to the Constitutional Court for review and cancellation, if deemed incompatible with the Constitution of the country. Outstanding in her career as Ombudsman of Sint Maarten, the achievement to have a national ordinance for the implementation of by the Constitutional Court in 2016 for lack of adequate legal of the rights of investigated, as well as third parties compelled to cooperate with such investigations. Various basic rights considered ill-protected, as argued by Dr. Arduin. While the highest advisory body of the country, the Council Advice, was not properly consulted in the process. During her tenure as Ombudsman, Dr. Arduin has served as the president of the Caribbean Ombudsman Association, as well as the board member and regional president for the Latin America and Caribbean region of International Ombudsman Institute. Upon her request, Dr. Arduin has been honorably discharged by the Parliament of Sint Maarten, effectively the 31st of December 2018, to start a well-deserved retirement in the new year. In January 2019, Dr. Arduin was decorated as Officer in the Order van Oranje Nassau by the Governor of Sint Maarten on behalf of the King of the Netherlands. In March 2020, she received the Quality Award International Women's Day, our national icon, awarded by the Government of Sint Maarten, Sint Maarten. And so, thank you for being here, Dr. Arduin, and then we could jump straight into our first question. So my first question for you today...
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. And so first question for you today is, being the first Ombudsman of Sint Maarten, you had very big responsibilities and, you were responsible for establishing the framework and the standard of the office. So can you tell us about your journey and what you've learned from this position?
Okay, let me try and put it in, little bits and pieces, because you can imagine after being the first ombudsman and having to establish a High Council of State institution that was foreign to our community. There much happened in the 8 years that I served. But let me start at the beginning. Establishing a new institute, onset of new constitutional ties within the Dutch Kingdom was, of course, not an easy task. First of all, the Institute of Ombudsman was foreign to us. Curacao had an ombudsman on island level. The Netherlands had the national ombudsman. However, the ombudsman was not an institute known to us. While say that a former island council member and member of parliament, Ms. Gracita Arnel, was very instrumental in championing since the time of the Island Council for Sint Maarten to have an ombudsman. Yes, and 2010, it really became a reality.
Mm-hmm.
That I've been an attorney before I became ombudsman, and as such, I had to leave my practice. I've worked, in fact, mainly in the private sector. As you mentioned, my PhD topic was real estate timesharing. So government was not in my it was not my focus. However, having been called upon to serve as the first ombudsman, first I had to do thorough research on the institution, what the functions are, what the tasks are, what are high councils of state, their competencies, etc., because I didn't only have to educate myself, but also the government, parliamentarians, and the entire community on this new institution. So I didn't reinvent the wheel because of, as I said, Curacao and the Netherlands had ombudsman. Other parts in the world also has ombudsman. As you mentioned, there's an International Ombudsman Institute. So I knocked on various doors to find out and to learn. At that time, 2010, 2011, we were saying that the Ombudsman Institute, the relationship between ombudsman, was a very good example of how you can work within the Dutch kingdom. Because I know of the National Ombudsman and said, hey, listen, we are in a kingdom relations. I'm not going to pay a lot of consultants and whatever to help me out. I'm knocking on your door to help me out. Yeah. Search under my conditions. I had somebody from the National Ombudsman in the Netherlands work with me on the island for 6 months. Yes, to enlighten me, to enlighten the skeleton staff that I had, because I started step by step. I had a strategic plan made in 2011, a 10-year strategic plan to develop the institution step by step. Because if you have to establish a new institution like that, you can easily become overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because you have to start it from the first pencil to going to the Constitutional Court. So I decided, okay, let me, with the help of professionals, I really believe in professionalism. I'm not a strategist. I'm not, that's not my field. So I made use of many other disciplines to assist me. So the 10-year strategic plan that I made provided step by step, block by block, the various areas. One of the areas that really needed a lot of attention, apart from the infrastructure, was awareness. We started a professional awareness campaign. We made a public relation plan, also with the assistance of professionals.
Yeah.
We had training in-house by professionals to teach us how to deal with the press, how to deal with the public. I'm an attorney, I'm a lawyer, I'm not a press person, I'm not And so we set up a campaign to go to all the districts, diligently, consistently informing what the task of the ombudsman was. Because as you know, the task of the ombudsman is to investigate and complaints of the public against behavior of government. Words like good governance, propriety. We are not readily terms used in our society. Propriety. A lot of people thought I'm talking about property. You know, propriety is good conduct, you know. So we had to really go out and teach about that. One of the big challenges I had while I'm an attorney, I'm accustomed to litigate and research as a PhD. Propriety, good conduct, good governance, how do you investigate that? Mm-hmm. And because these are behaviors, what are the standards? And so based on international criteria, and I developed a list of about 24 norms of propriety, and looked into international literature from the Netherlands to define what these forms of propriety are, and then how to investigate them. So it was quite a journey. I must say, apart from the task to investigate complaints, as you said, as you mentioned in the introduction, the Ombudsman of Sint Maarten has a very specific additional task which no ombudsman has in the Netherlands, in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. However, that is the going to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court itself is very unique within the Dutch Kingdom. Sint Maarten only a country within the Dutch Kingdom that has a Constitutional Court. Having said that, having been an attorney for over 20 years, assisted me to develop the procedure to go to the Constitutional Court.
Nice. And how, sorry, I'm trying to word the question in my head, but how was that experience going into the Constitutional Court and bringing in the cases, for example, like you mentioned in your bio with the Integrity Chamber? So what was that experience like, and being able to present that argument that this was not something constitutional and it needs to be reworked?
Okay. That case was not my first case to the Constitutional Court, but it got very much attention. I will go into that case in a while, but I will point out the first case which I took to the Constitutional Court. That was in 2013, where the penal code came over from the Netherlands Antilles had to be adjusted. And that penal code, in my opinion, had some articles that were against the Constitution, which were in contravention with the Constitution. Because what does the Ombudsman have to do? Government and Parliament, they are bound to the law. No, the Constitution is the fundamental law of the country. No law is allowed to be in contravention of the Constitution. You should be able to check, hey, does this law, is it going against the Constitution or not? The Netherlands doesn't have a constitutional court because, in fact, there is an old principle that laws established by the highest legislator, which is Parliament and government, may not be touched. Based on the Trias Politica, the court cannot sit on the seat of Parliament, of the legislator. The legislator cannot sit on the seat of the government. You have these powers. However, modern democratic societies recognize that even if the legislator made a law, sometimes it could be that that law is in contravention of the Constitution. And in the Constitution, you have the basic human rights.
Mm-hmm.
Human rights, basic human rights, fundamental human rights are holy.
Mm-hmm.
Are our natural rights. Nobody can trample on those rights. So you have to be very prudent as legislator not to trample on those basic rights. Now, the first case I took to the Constitutional Court was the Penal Code. And I will just give one example in the Penal Code that I thought was in contravention of the Constitution. That was the clause whereby somebody sentenced for life had no means of parole. Basically, you cannot put a person in prison and throw away the keys and say, rot in prison. No, that person must have the ability to redeem itself, because what is the purpose of our criminal system is to help redeem for them to come back into society. But if now you put in the penal code that a lifelonger cannot get parole, then you are trampling on the basic human rights. And when I brought that law to the Constitutional Court, I must say it got quite some international attention, especially from the Netherlands, whereby activists that were championing this situation of people sentenced for life, that they have the right to parole, they really monitored the case very closely. And yes, the Constitutional Court agreed with us that a lifelonger has to have the possibility of parole. And as such, that clause, the government and parliament had to review it again and make sure that a clause about parole was introduced. There were other parts of that penal code. What I did as well, as it was the very first case, a new country, certain rules and procedures were not properly crystallized yet. We did not have the experience with it. I also sent them to the Constitutional Court to make a decision on that so that everybody is clear about it, because for procedural sake. The case that you mentioned of the Integrity Chamber, that one was a very important case. I did not speak about it in public while it was going on, because I had realized also, one, I didn't want it to be politicized. A lot of thought, how come you are taking the case, the ordinance to the Constitutional Court? Are you for corruption? I said, no.
Not for corruption.
You know, do you want to cover up for politicians? I said, no. No matter what a person has done, the basic human rights have to be protected at all times. And why that case was very important, because Sint Maarten had signed a protocol with the Netherlands about the constitutional, about the Integrity Chamber, right? That to fight corruption, that Integrity Chamber had to come, and a draft was made, that Sint Maarten had to comply with. When I studied the law, because all new laws have to be sent to the Ombudsman for review. And because the procedure is you go to the laws go to the Council of Advice before they go to Parliament. Yeah. Council of Advice advises and it goes to Parliament. It's being discussed in Parliament and amendments can be made.
Yeah.
If Parliament votes for it, it goes back to government. Government ratifies it by signature of the governor and the pertinent minister. Now, whole procedure went through, it became, the law was ratified. However, a law doesn't take effect before 6 weeks, to ratification, because those 6 weeks are for the Ombudsman to review the law. To review the law, I realized that there was a clause in that law and related clauses that, in fact, the Integrity Chamber investigating misconduct of any office holder could do that without the prosecutor being involved, without the court being involved. If they want to come to Kamilah and search her computer because Kamilah had an interview with this particular office holder, they can do that. Kamilah was compelled to cooperate. If would not cooperate, to give the computer for them to do the investigation, Kamilah could be fined or even get a prison sentence of 3 months. So I say, wait a minute, why do we have a penal system?
Yeah.
The purpose of the prosecutor. If the prosecutor wants to do that, he has to go to the court and ask permission. But now you are instituting integrity chamber that can pass all of that. So secondly, what happened when the integrity chamber find out all what they have to find out, what they do, take the information and give it to the prosecutor and circumvent the whole penal system? Well, the Constitutional Court agreed totally with me. And most of all, I said a very important amendment was made during the handling of the case in Parliament that had so many consequences that you had to send it back to the Council of Advice before voting on it. And so the law was squashed in its totality, and government had to make a new law, had to amend law. What the Constitutional Court did in its decision gave a proper outline to all the points that I presented, why I thought that the law was in contravention of the Constitution, gave advice how to make it a proper law. And lo and behold, when after the hurricane of 2017, when the Netherlands promised and negotiated with Sint Maarten to help financially to reconstruct the country, the Netherlands said, okay, the law was squashed, but now I want you to introduce the law, so that we can have an integrity chamber on Sint Maarten and to prevent corruption. It's a good thing that there was a verdict of the Constitutional Court on the table, because our government could follow all the indications that the Constitutional Court made and make a proper law. And so today we have an integrity chamber and with a complete different approach than the original law.
That is so crazy to me, because I guess in my head, I would assume someone would have spotted that before it arrived to your office and waved the red flag on that specific clause, that it's like, maybe this shouldn't be something we should vote on, and then try to negotiate, I guess, debate, make amendments, send it back to the government. I don't know. In my head, it seems kind of crazy that it had to reach all the way to your office for you to spot this specific line.
The point is, pertaining to that specific law, I think what happened there, because the protocol was signed between the Netherlands and Sint Maarten, one thought you could not touch it. You can imagine that for me as ombudsman, I had to make the choice. Do I take it to the Constitutional Court, whereby there is a written agreement between Sint Maarten and the Netherlands pertaining to this law? What are the consequences? However, I always take my functions very serious. And I said, my function as ombudsman is established in the Constitution. All I have to answer to is the Constitution and the ordinance of an ombudsman. A protocol between the Netherlands and and Sint Maarten doesn't guide me. So I have to put that aside, yes, and go for it. And I think that in hindsight, everybody acknowledged and understood why I took it to the Constitutional Court. Because if I did not, if my arguments were not correct, the Constitution would have never squashed the whole law.
Yep.
The point is, as you said, how come nobody saw that? That's the importance of our Constitutional Court. If we did not have a Constitutional Court, I could not have taken it. Nobody, no third party could have looked at it. The Constitutional Court could not change the law itself, because as court, they cannot sit on the chair of the legislator, neither chair of the government. So my premise, my point of view pertaining to the Constitutional Court, because of course there's often a debate, but do we need the Constitutional Court? I say yes. We have proven the value of a Constitutional Court. For example, in the Netherlands, you have the second chamber and the first chamber. The first chamber checks the work of the second chamber. We don't have that first chamber to check what the second chamber did on a more active note. And so I believe that, in fact, all our Caribbean Netherlands countries should have a Constitutional Court, not separate Constitutional Courts, maybe because it's too costly, but maybe join together and say, hey, listen, let's do this together. And that the Constitutional Court that's Sint Maarten established become the Constitutional Court also for Curaçao and Aruba. And I think that you can put more tasks towards the Constitutional Court. Give, for example, Constitutional Court the task to solve constitutional issues for the countries. Because as we know, for years, there is this discussion about electoral reform.
Yeah.
Article 33 and Article 59 of the Constitution. And hey, maybe if you give the Constitutional Court that as extra task to also interpret clauses of the Constitution, we have less political debates on certain issues.
I agree. And so transitioning into my second question, which I guess focus more on your post-retirement life. And so I know you made a public statement that you're willing to give more courses to the general public, but you also been given training to Parliament as well. So what encouraged you to start giving out those legislative training services? And then what can people expect from those services in understanding the country's laws and procedures?
Okay. Kamilah, really, I'm telling everybody, for 3 years since my retirement, I stayed very quiet because um, I one of the reasons I stepped down, you may know that I stayed on as ombudsman after my first term of 7 years. I stayed on because of the hurricane. Had to step down the 10th of October. Lo and behold, the 7th of September, we had the hurricanes.
Yeah.
As I consider my functions with a lot of responsibility, I could not see me stepping down and leave the office in disarray. So my point was, a captain doesn't jump ship during the storm. So I in the 8 years that I stayed on, because when I said I accepted the second term under the condition that when things stabilize a little, that I will step down and give younger ones the possibility. Huh? And in the 8 years that I was ombudsman, I got a very good view looking from outside, looking in, looking at how government function and how Parliament functions, because I was reporting to Parliament on a yearly basis. And so when I retired, the 3 years of silence I used to reflect on my career. My career as first a teacher, then an attorney, and then ombudsman. As an attorney, I was looking in, as an attorney, it feels like if you're standing outside the box and looking in the box, because of your oath, you have you get a lot of information, but it is, from a distance. You had cases with government. I was looking inside from outside, constantly looking at good governance and propriety. So in my analysis, after I stepped down as ombudsman, I analyzed what the issues are. In 10 years, we had 9 governments.
Yep.
So wait a minute. What I put things in perspective. What did I experience as ombudsman? Championing good governance and propriety. And I draw my conclusions. After when COVID hit, the issues even became bigger.
Yep.
The back and forth with the Netherlands. And I was thinking, okay, how come we cannot discuss and interact with the Netherlands better than we're doing? Because as I said at the beginning, when I established the Institute of Ombudsman, I went to my colleague in the Netherlands, who I did not know. I said, knock, knock. Are in a kingdom, not for our nice faces, yeah? The preamble of the charter is saying we are standing on our own, ever with the will to help each other. Knock, knock, I need help. I ain't gonna pay you for that. Right? Yeah, we're gonna come to an agreement. And so in those 8 years, I worked very closely with my Dutch counterparts. And it did not cost me, that kind of money. So when I stepped down, I said, okay, what is the situation? And I made an inventory and I came to the conclusion, I just put some little notes as you asked me that, some issues that I realized we were missing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we at 10-10-10, we lacked preparedness. Yeah. We lacked preparedness, both the public and office holders. Because I say lack preparedness, the community, as Ombudsman, I realize that the community in general do not understand what a democracy is, did not understand our constitution, did not understand the function of politicians. Had the attitude like if politicians, office holder, are doing you a favor. That only if you are friends with them, you can get certain things done. That was the culture, that was the concept. So a lack of preparedness, not only from the office holders, not understanding the laws, how the mechanisms work, the time that you say, listen, I'm going to give you this and this, and pass by me tomorrow. No, there are procedures. And wait in line? No, there are, you are giving a service to the public. That's why you are assisted by civil servants. Because there was a lack of preparedness both by the public and office holder, you had lack of proper guidance to the civil servants. In my, as I said at the beginning, we did a lot of campaigning to bring about awareness. I did a lot of workshops with civil servants. And you know what? They start recognizing the weaknesses in the system, and we are very willing and open to work with it. However, if you're not getting the proper guidance, you fall into what you used to do. I realize lack of knowledge of laws and procedures. If a civil servant has to do a certain action in its job, but is doing it because the person have learned just to do that without knowing based on what law, rules, or regulation, when Kamilah comes to the window and asks, they're not being friendly to you because they don't have the answer for you, because nobody instructed them. So they are treating Kamilah very rough. In fact, not because they are not nice, they just don't know. So, so those are the things I realized. Then in reviewing my career as ombudsman, of course you can say a lot of things that are not good, but then I realized we have a dilemma. And I think the dilemma we have is as a result of not understanding or assuming our autonomy right way. Autonomy. Yeah, 10-10-10 Sint Maarten got an autonomous status. Autonomy means accepting your responsibility and give accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Kamilah, you told me you are, no, I will not repeat your age because, you told me your age, you are over 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
By law, when you are 18, you are an adult.
Yes.
You don't have to go to a court to let your parents know that you are an adult.
Yeah.
The law provides that.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to Kamilah whether she's now going to behave as an adult or as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or is Kamilah going to say, hey, I made 18 and now my mother doesn't have to tell me to clean my room,
Mm-hmm.
the dishes. And if I go away to study, I can't ask her to send that lovely meal that she was making for me by plane to the States.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm going to have to cook her own food, buy her own stuff to cook the food.
Yep.
And if Kamilah makes a mess of it, doesn't study,
Mm-hmm.
party all the time, whose responsibility is that?
It's Kamilah's responsibility.
It's Kamilah's responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I concluded we have a dilemma. Do we understand what autonomy means? With autonomy comes responsibility and accountability. The preamble of the charter is saying standing on your own with a will to assist each other. Have we been standing on our own, or have we been looking for assistance and support before we try to stand on our own? Issues like that came. However, Kamilah, you are in the States studying.
Mm-hmm.
You know that assuming your adulthood, you have to take responsibility and authority of your own life.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom and dad, they are not in the States.
Mm-hmm.
When you mess up, say, yes, but it's my mother and my father, they didn't look after me. No, you're an adult.
Yep.
Take your own responsibility. You have to assume your own authority. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And if your parents come on vacation to the States and see that you're not eating properly and you're making a mess and they start straightening your house, you can be angry or say, oh, shucks, I have to pull up my socks.
Yep.
To do that, it takes confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Confidence in yourself, Kamilah. Yeah? When would you have confidence if you know? For example, how can you, let's say, take proper care of yourself if you don't know how to budget? Because as soon as your study financing or money of your parents come in a week's time, you can finish that. And for the other 3 weeks, you don't have a cent to eat. So you know how to budget.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge how to budget, you have more confidence to take care of yourself.
Yep.
So I'm saying that's a dilemma. Autonomy means assuming your authority that is yours. Period. Assuming authority comes with confidence because you have confidence in yourself. How would you have confidence if you know what to do?
Mm-hmm.
You know what to do, you wouldn't have the confidence to assume your authority. And as such, I have, and as we spoke earlier, when I said, what did I learn, from the Ombudsman? And one of the things I said I learned is that there is too little knowledge about our laws and procedures, and such, we get into this dilemma. We don't have the confidence to assume responsibility. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I have established in my analysis these past 3 years, the importance of knowing your political history.
Yep.
Interpreting the history from our side.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give, of course, more examples. However, coming back to your question, what inspired me to make myself available for training? In 2020, Parliament asked me to give some training to the new members of Parliament regarding our constitution and how you call that, laws, etc. And I did that, kingdom relations. And in 2021, one called upon me again to give training, and I did a follow-up training. However, in 2021, I made it more practical, and I had one point. I established one fundamental way of doing it. I say, listen, retired. I did a review. I'm not going to mince words.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel I step on your toe, don't tell me, cuss me when I leave.
Mm-hmm.
Anything I say is straightforward. I'm not going to think every time when I say something whose toes I might step on. Yes. Because as ombudsman, when governments were falling every minute, I said, I don't care if you want to play music chair. Yes. For me, a ministry is a ministry, no matter who sits on that chair.
Yep.
So in my analysis, I then realized after the second that I give training to Parliament and my review of community in its totality, I said, what can I do to bring about knowledge and awareness? And there I then decided to write an article, a call to action for 2022, where I called upon political parties, anybody that has aspiration for a political career, to start now.
Yeah.
Start selecting the people, start training the people, because we can no longer learn on the job.
Mm-hmm.
An office holder has to be prepared, has to hit the ground running. Being a parliamentarian or a minister or even an advisor in the cabinet, that is not the time that you're now going to learn what the Constitution is about, what the laws are about, and how they work. No, you have to know that the minute you are taking that office. So my call to action to anybody aspiring to start a political career, start training from now. The general public, the COVID situation have brought out some more aspects, the deficiencies in our community. And as I said, as ombudsman, one of the things I also realized, if a democracy cannot work, if the people think that government is there to please them.
Yep.
Government has to manage our affairs in a responsible manner. And we have to hold government accountable no matter who sits there.
Mm-hmm.
If I voted for you, that is the time that I'm going to hold you accountable because I trusted you. That's why I voted for you.
Yep.
And not cover what you are doing because you are my party. So I said, the community also have to be empowered. And as such, I made a 2-hour presentation based on the history, because to know where we go from here, we have to know where we come from. If we do not know the history in pertaining to our perspective, not of whoever told us, if we don't put that in proper perspective, we cannot understand where we are, why we are like that, why we are not assuming our autonomy and think somebody else have to come and tell us what autonomy is, and that somebody else have to tell other people how they have to treat us. No. So I said I made a 2-hour presentation and make it available to anybody that wants to learn a little more. Of course, if there are groups after my presentation, if they are interested in in-depth courses, we can discuss to make customized courses for those individuals and I as a consultant. So that is, in fact, the background of my call to action. It is not calling to action only, but putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you prepared to do about it? And for me, I gave there are 2 groups that called upon me immediately within 24 hours, and I started to give some presentations already. So through your program, through your podcast, I hope that others will see the need for it. The first presentation, the 2-hour presentation, it's free of charge. So it's a beginning. I called the people to be curious because with the presentation, I hope to enhance the curiosity within people, that they get the information. Hey, but she said that. Let me go and research that myself. And, like that, together, we will be able to grow.
Yeah, I really love that. And I know, like earlier, you mentioned a lot about, we have to hold ourselves accountable. And I appreciate that you said that, because I think for the last couple of months, I'm like, you know what issue we have? We don't like to hold ourselves accountable. So hearing you like reinforce that at least made me know I was not going like way off track with my thinking and everything. And so I get it. I completely get where you're coming from. And I really hope people take this opportunity, because it's one thing you can do so much effort to provide so much education, but then sometimes if they don't want to learn, you're just in this weird limbo. It's always interesting. And I guess this transition to my last question around this topic I have. So as you mentioned, you've been doing all your observation. I think within these last 2 years in Parliament has been a very interesting time in regards of understanding our legal documents, in regards of our constitution and the Kingdom Charter. So how do you feel, as someone who's an ombudsman for so long, someone who understands the law, someone who are doing these trainings, that these discussions around our legal documents have been handled by our parliamentarians and members of government?
Okay. In general, I don't give opinions about people. Yeah, because it's an opinion. It's my opinion. So I will stay away from giving an opinion about, as you say, how our parliamentarians, how these people have been handling. What I will say that, and I'm not following the discussions diligently, so even that makes me in no position to give a comment on that. However, what I'm hearing is that there is a bigger effort, yes, to discuss based on documents, rather than just grandstanding, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That and I'm hearing that from other people as well. However, you can imagine if one has not been accustomed of laws and procedures, and one is learning. Sometimes it might look that the best effort is not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
However, and so we cannot judge based on that. I believe that one has been trying to be more factual, yes, to be more direct. For example, when I was doing the training last year, I complimented Parliament for thinking outside of the box, where they brought a motion against a minister, yes, and motion not party related, yes, but one voted for the motion across the board. And it was not a motion, let's get rid of the minister and throw down government. One out of the box came with a different type of motion, right? And to express Parliament's concern. And so when I look at those issues, I'm definitely saying there is progress. Absolutely. I'm seeing that one understands that it's no longer, I feel that, yes, because and I think one of the reasons why I believe last year I was called back to do a follow-up training, and sitting and looking as a retiree and listening to government and Parliament, one of the things I realized that one had no diplomatic knowledge. As a government official, you are in fact a diplomat. And in negotiations, for example, with the Netherlands, you have to use diplomatic language. Look, if you are, Kamilah, if you have some good arguments, yes, to tell me why a certain thing has to happen, you end by saying, yes, and I feel that you have to that. Anything you said before goes down the drain. What you feel is not important. Diplomatic language tells you that you have to say, based on these and these arguments, I conclude we should go this way. And then it is objective. It is, I can listen to you because you have brought forth the arguments, and based on those arguments, you conclude. But if you tell me you feel that, I'm not even going to listen anymore, because you feel that, your neighbor feels something else, your cousin feels something else, and where are we going? You're feeling nothing that you are feeling. I had sent a website to government and Parliament about diplomatic language and diplomacy, because these are tools that you need, whether it's discussing with the Netherlands or with other countries. There are certain words that you use. As an attorney, I can't go to court and use any and every word. No, the standard words I have to adhere to. Yeah. So coming back to the opinion, no, I don't have an opinion. However, I think that there is a serious effort to do things different. We have the longest sitting government now.
That's crazy.
If I have, as I said in my article, I don't know if I have to congratulate, but I think we have to make note of that. That indication that one is trying to do the right things, and we still have to do a lot of homework because you catch up a lot. If you don't have a history, a background of research.
That is very true. That is very, very true. It's still crazy that 2 years in is the longest that we have. It is something. And so thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts and your knowledge and everything that you have to offer with me. And, before we officially wrap up, I'd like to end with a fun type of question. That's usually not related to the conversation that we just had. And so my fun question for you is, what's the funniest thing that has happened to you when you were a teacher?
You're talking about more than 40. I have a story of more than 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell the story short, to you and your listening audience, I apologize if anybody will be offended by the word I'm going to use, but I'm going to give you the funny story as is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was a Dutch language teacher, biology teacher. Mm-hmm. I worked in Curacao and on Sint Maarten at Milton Peters College. Now, this is such a funny story. I was, as biology teacher, some students think biology is a little hard, but I always like to make it fun. Mm-hmm. So to check whether the students understood, I used to do quizzes with them. Mm-hmm. Divide them in groups and then quizzes, and it's a competition. Mm-hmm. And they really used to love it. And this time we had the human anatomy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, human anatomy. And again, my apology if someone was in, because I still laugh about it. So there was, most of the time there were 4 groups, and then by elimination, there were 2 left. There was a tie. And now I'm having this question to my students, and the language of instruction is Dutch. We're doing it in Dutch and, going nice. The students enthusiastic. The Thai question, I ask, how do you name the organ where that holds the sperm of a man? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So everybody quiet. Suddenly, a Dutch girl shouts out with a lot of enthusiasm. She could not find the Dutch word, and she used the word that they use among them as teenagers. And she shouted, "Sakirebu!" Of course, you wouldn't know, yes, but for the Curacao people. And so the whole class stayed quiet, like, how she's saying that. I said, bingo, you all won. And then everybody started to laugh, because I told them, listen, I don't care which word she used. I asked the organ the that has, that carries the sperm of the. I don't care how you all call it among yourself, yeah? It's not the Dutch language class, yeah, biology class, and that's correct. So it was a laughter of relief that the group won, relief that I didn't get angry, and and so that is one of the funniest things that I had.
I love that. That's a great story. That is actually hilarious. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. It was hilarious. It was a Dutch girl. She got wrecked, and then the fact that she knew the slang as a Dutch girl, the slang in Papiamento better than the official Dutch word. It's hilarious.
That is very, very hilarious. Oh, I'm going to be laughing about that for the rest of the day. That is funny. But thank you so much once again for doing this interview with me. And if anyone wants to reach out and connect with you, how can they do that?
They can WhatsApp me, 580-4110. WhatsApp me, not calling.
I felt that one.
Yeah, 580-4110.
All right. And so thank you so much. And this has been episode 8 of the We Talking podcast. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.